Principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill, second reading.
The Honourable David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, members of this House can still change their mind.
Stop. Hold it. Where are the police helping us with this? Now, let me make it very clear. Anyone else in here thinks that that's an acceptable intervention in the activities of this Parliament will be treated harshly by the officers of the law who are here. Completely unacceptable. We live in a democracy. This is the place where opinions are given, not from the gallery. The Honourable David Seymour.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Members of this House can still change their mind and send this bill onwards to a referendum of the people. And I ask that members listen carefully to understand the choice they'll be denying the New Zealand people if they oppose this bill. 5 decades ago, this House passed the Treaty of Waitangi Act, saying that the treaty had principles, but failing to say what they were, and those principles as a concept are not going away. The National Party New Zealand First commitment to review the principles will not get rid of them. The review will not touch the Treaty of Waitangi Act itself, and it will only review other bills with the help of Te Puni Kokiri. With the unelected Parliament silent on the principles for 50 years, the unelected judges, the Waitangi Tribunal and the public servants have defined them instead. They say the treaty is a, quote, partnership between races. They say one race has a special place in New Zealand. The effects of these principles have become more and more obvious lately. We've seen a separate Māori health authority.
We're going to hear the balance of this speech and all others in silence. It's not a matter to be excited about. It's a parliamentary process. Everyone has a right to speak and be heard, and they will be today.
We've seen a separate Māori health authority. We've seen resource management decisions held up for years awaiting cultural impact assessments due to treaty principles in the RMA. We've seen half the seats governing Three Waters infrastructure reserved for 1/6 of the population. We've seen public entities appoint 2 chief executives to represent each side of this so-called partnership between races. And we've seen a history curriculum teach children to believe history is a simple story of victims and villains divided by their ancestry. Some will say that a government can change these policies case by case. And indeed, I'm proud to be part of a government that is doing that. The problem is, though, that another government can just as easily bring them back if the bad ideas behind these policies are not confronted. And that's why we see professional bodies, universities, the public service and schools nurturing the divisive idea that the treaty is a partnership, hoping it will grow again at some future time. The partnership principle tells us that Kiwis should be ranked by the arrival of their ancestors. We've seen it in recent weeks. Just one disgraceful example was the attack on my colleague Paramjit Parmar by the Dean of a law school for being a migrant who proudly chose this country. She faced no consequences for that, and it shows how low our country has sunk. The idea that your race matters is a version of a bigger problem. It's part of that bigger idea that our lives are determined by things out of our control. And I hear the leader of Te Pāti Māori saying, oh, it's not about race. He named his party after a race. Of course you have a problem with race in this country under our current policies. They may have occurred. These problems, these ideas that determine our future, these events may have occurred before we were even born. We face a denial that we can make a difference in our own lives and that we have a right to do so by this old-fashioned primitive determinism that should have no place in a country that is founded and lived in by pioneers. We're all thinking, we're all valuing beings. We should all have ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi, the same rights and duties, just as the 3rd article of Te Tiriti itself says. And that's why the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill would finally define the principles, in line with the treaty itself, giving all Kiwis equal rights. And let me read those proposed principles, because if anyone wants to vote against this bill in this House today, then let them explain specifically why they oppose the words in the bill. It says, Principle 1, the Executive Government of New Zealand has the full power to govern, and this Parliament of New Zealand has full power to make laws. Principle 2, the Crown recognises and will respect and protect the rights that Hapu and Iwi Māori had under the Treaty of Waitangi at the time they signed it, so long as those rights are extended to everyone who lives here or are set out in a treaty settlement. And Principle 3, everyone is equal before the law. Everyone is entitled without discrimination to A, the equal protection and equal benefit of the law, and B, the equal enjoyment of the same fundamental human rights. People who oppose this bill should ask themselves, what is the best argument they have against these principles, and are they prepared to say that argument out loud? And if not, perhaps they should support the bill so the people of New Zealand can have a say at referendum. I now turn to the submissions from the Select Committee, and I'd like to thank the Chair and most of the members of the committee. They heard 80 hours of submissions, nearly a record. However, submissions are not a referendum. If MPs believe that the bill should be passed depending on public opinion, they should front up, vote for the bill and send it to an actual referendum, which is what the bill does. There are many bills that have attracted large numbers of opposing submissions and yet been very popular with the general public. End-of-life choice, abortion law reform, both had 90% of submissions against them at Select Committee but proved overwhelmingly popular with the public. And so it is with the principles I've just read out that on average enjoy support from the public by 2 to 1 when all New Zealanders are asked on an equal basis. Select committees, while they may not tell us about numbers, can, though, tell us about ideas. And I believe that this submission process has actually been very useful. Some argued against the bill's first principle, that this Parliament has the full power to make laws. They said that the Chiefs never ceded sovereignty when they signed the treaty. What they cannot explain is how a society is supposed to work without clear laws that apply equally to all. The answer is that does not and cannot work. People who believe that, for example, that an American county or an Indian band in Canada having limited jurisdiction in a limited territory is the same as shared sovereignty are not taking the issue seriously. Still others argue that maybe Parliament can make laws, but not this law. What they're really saying is our constitutional future can be decided by the unelected, but not the elected, and certainly not the people in a referendum. Those are the fundamentally undemocratic propositions anyone opposing this bill is really signing up to, that they do not trust the New Zealand people to determine their constitutional future, and I'm so proud to stand for the one party in this House that most certainly does. There were two objections that cancelled each other out. One said the bill isn't needed because Māori don't actually have special rights in New Zealand. Other objectors said the bill is an abomination because it denies